gives me the great privilege to welcome on stage uQwati uDikela inzalelwane yasecala. Now, if you know anything about Minister Mantashe, he will tell you where he comes from. So I've taken the honor to steal the limelight from him. I wonder if he has a better way of introducing himself other than to say, I am Gwede Mantashe from Ekal. But Mantashe, thank you so much. Minister in the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy.
Enkosi kunonke, program directors, both of you. Thank you very much. Sisiphumzile. Bathi nguDr. Phumzile Mlambo Ncuka. Mna ndikubiza ngoba ungisisiphumzile. Bakubiza ngento yoba uyi-former deputy president. Mna ndikubiza ngento yoba uyi-former minister of DME. That is very important because it explains that you are among the few who understand the sector. Very few people understand the sector. It's a complex sector. People don't understand it. They are not interested in it, except when the fiscal is in trouble. Dr. Nobu Hlenkabane, Deputy to this important department, Pengike Kana, Deputy Minister in the Presidency, responsible for planning, monitoring and evaluation. If we had time, I would explain the distinction between monitoring and evaluation. It's not the same. Monitoring is the numbers. Evaluation is the impact. Deputy ministers from our two neighbors, Namibia and the DRC. I'm told the deputy minister from Mozambique missed a plane. We would have loved to have ministers from 5 countries, but I forgive Zimbabwe. They've just finished elections. And I'm sure by now they don't have a minister yet. President of the Mineral Council, South Africa, Usisnolita, Gwede, tukubonile ke ne-CEO yakhona uMzila. And Mazbu, oh, thank you very much. Mzila is the new CEO of the Mineral Council. Who replace Roger Baxter. Now, it's quite important because it's quite an important entity for this discussion. Captains of industry, those who took time to be here today, very important, distinguished guests who are here, members of the media who are here, Team TMRE. Now, it is with great sense of honor and privilege that I welcome you to the inaugural African Critical Mineral Summit convened on African soil. Organizers, you may not understand what you started. We have this here. I was talking to Mrs. Pumzil. You know Mrs. Pumzil? AU have a number of mineral committees, but AU has no committee of ministers on extractive industry. It's a misnomer from where I'm seated because Africa is mining. Africa leave holes on the ground. Africa open holes and move to the port, export those minerals, raw as they are. And we don't have a comment to discuss a strategy. That's a misnomer. So I'm inviting everybody who can to whisper to Powers Bay to appreciate the importance of this committee. Your participation in the summit, which comes a few days after the BRICS summit, We had a big summit here. Your being here proves that you are committed to collaborative efforts aimed at developing African continent through enormous mineral resource endowment. At the center of the two-day summit discussion is the development of a shared vision. A shared vision. That means instead of Africa engaging in the race to the bottom, Africa must share a vision and say, this is the direction we're going to take as a continent, and this vision for critical minerals with which our continent is blessed, and our aim is to foster regional cooperation and economic growth. There's something scarce in the continent called money. Finance is scarce in the continent, and it makes us a little bit reckless on trading with our minerals. Sometimes you go to a country, you trade with maize meal. They give you minerals as a form of payment, which means that we must do something more to derive value from these minerals. Whereas there is no universal definition of critical minerals, several countries have interchangeably used and defined critical, strategic, and future minerals according to their importance in economic growth, industrialization, technological advancement, energy transition, geopolitical consideration, supply chain vulnerabilities, environmental and social concern, and strategic importance. That means every country defines critical mineral in its own way. We have a duty to have a universal definition of critical minerals. Allow me to take this opportunity to draw attention to some of the existing definitions. In its critical mineral strategy, United Kingdom defined critical minerals as minerals with high economic vulnerability and high global supply risk. Vulnerability and high supply risk. That's the definition of the UK. The United States, in its own act in 2020, defines critical minerals as non-fuel minerals, mineral material essential to economic and national security of the United States, and which has a supply chain vulnerable to disruption. So if it is disrupted, the country becomes vulnerable. And the United States took time to define critical minerals in terms of its own view of its own vulnerability. Australia, in its critical mineral strategy, defined critical minerals as minerals that are essential for energy transport, aerospace, defense, medical, automotive, and telecommunication sectors, which will also be used to further advance manufacturing application. That's Australia. Lastly, let me give you what Canada says. Canada, in its critical mineral strategy, defines critical minerals as a mineral that must be essential to Canada's economic security, and its supply is threatened or required for its national transition to a low-carbon economy or a sustainable source of high-strategic critical minerals for its partners and allies. Now, look at these different definitions. These definitions tell us that there is an ongoing debate about critical minerals, and we cannot just be an item on the agenda. We are mining many of these critical minerals. While these definitions vary depending on each country's needs, each of these nations lists various mineral resources that they deem critical based on their resource endowment, supply chain vulnerability, and specific economic and technological priorities. Each country. They don't mine, many of these countries don't mine these critical minerals. They use them, but they define them. Now, our argument as South Africa is that the criticalness of a mineral does not depend on who is using it, Hence, we submit that to this summit that critical minerals cannot be defined in terms of those who use them and those who have and those who have them. Even though critical minerals may be used per country, they cannot be defined per country. Can be. So the summit, therefore, affords us an opportunity, we're very unique, not only to define critical minerals, but also to develop a clear roadmap on how to maximize the exploitation and monetization of these resources for value addition to our economies. I can tell you that between ourselves and the DRC, for example, we've almost all these minerals that are regarded as critical, just two countries, let alone the continent, let alone the region. Just two countries have all these minerals. Like, for example, the fact of the matter is that Africa holds enormous reserves of minerals such as platinum, we're leading, manganese, we're leading, vanadium, we're on the top, nickel, copper, cobalt, lithium, graphite, titanium, rhodium, and other rare earth minerals. That list is not exhaustive. That is the list of minerals that are regarded as critical minerals. All these minerals are listed in the various minerals that are deemed critical. The manner in which Africa defines and lists critical minerals is vital because it will have significant importance for our strategic planning, prioritization, and investment decision making. Therefore, our approach to defining critical minerals must be holistic, with consideration of our national and continental needs and global trends. Needs must be home, needs must be in the continent, but you must analyze the trends in the globe. You can't ignore them. We are not an island, you are part of that globe. If we were to use the USA's characterization of critical minerals as serving an essential function in the manufacturing of product, the absence of which would have significant consequences for the economy and national security, one can therefore argue that, for example, coal can equally be deemed critical mineral for the generation of baseload energy. And researchers are telling me, I don't know what they tell you, that you have elements of rare earth elements that are found in coal. So if we don't burn coal, let's get those rare earth elements and use them. Because this is important to us, because as we deal with decarbonization, we equally need to look into the issue of energy poverty, which characterizes our continent. For every two people, one doesn't have access to electricity in the continent. For every two, about 600 million people have no access to electricity in the continent. And therefore, the question of energy poverty is quite important. In some instances, people are connected to electricity grid, but because of the tariff, they can't afford it. In Lower Cala, where I grew up and I regard as my home, we are connected in every hut, but we only use electricity for lighting. We don't use electricity for space heating and cooking. We don't. We can't afford it. We just can't afford it. We still use wood and coal and paraffin for space heating and cooking. That is where we should be serious about it. Therefore, we submit that absence of coal in the diversified energy mix will equally have significant consequences for our economies, and thus coal ought to be classified as critical mineral. I've listed the other ones that are normally regarded. I'm adding coal. Let me add another one, another mineral that is normally ignored despite the big role it plays. On the same note, another critical mineral that does not find prominent expression on the list of critical minerals is uranium. Uranium is not listed there, which can be used for various nuclear applications such as generation of clear base load energy, nuclear research reactors for medical purposes. Isotopes come out of uranium, but we don't list it as a critical mineral. It is a critical mineral for patients who need isotopes for cure. It is a critical mineral. France derives its electricity 75% from nuclear, and therefore uranium is a critical mineral. Europe has defined uranium and gas as part of the green transition. And that debate is not opened here in South Africa, and we must open it. Now, there is a global acceptance that nuclear and gas will play a critical role in clean energy technology in just energy transition from high carbon emission to low carbon emissions. It is therefore our submission that uranium, which Africa is endowed with, is a critical mineral for development of clean energy and medicine. Now, the crux of the matter is that there can be no green future without Africa's minerals. That's not our admission, it's admission by the EU. The EU admits it as a very developed bloc of nations that there can be no green future without Africa's minerals. But, for instance, between South Africa and DRC, we get all these critical minerals. And our view is, it cannot just be a definition of Europe that there can be no green future without Africa's minerals. We must say, how are we going to use that rare advantage to change the life in the continent and actually develop Africa from the least developed continent to some leading the path? You know, I was talking to a few people yesterday. I said to them, you know, history is very unique in one way, in that you look at it, you study it, you understand it. And it is history that tells you where you are, why are you here, and it also tells you what is coming your way. That is what we should do with critical minerals. We have had minerals, the developed economy took our minerals for song. Developed themselves, we remain poor. That is history. That's where we are now. Then it must tell us where we should move to. If it can't, history is of no use. Now, however, we need to be frank in our discussion. This means that honestly engage with the notion of local beneficiation of critical minerals and collectively answer the following question: who will do the beneficiation? Every time we talk about beneficiation, says Pumzile, as long as when we are a minister here, mining companies tell us, says Nolit, we are good at mining, but we're not beneficiators. And therefore, at the end of the day, beneficiation becomes nobody's ball. And what happens is that when we look into what impacts on our economic performance, we identify ESCOM, load shedding, we identify Transnet, we identify crime. But with Transnet, we identify Transnet because we're still very much locked to bulk commodity export. Mine it, take it to the coast, send it away. And that is what we must change. We must add value here. There's no reason that the Northern Cape cannot be an industrial hub with the deposits of minerals that are there, untouched and growing at a fast pace. So, and therefore, who will do the beneficiation? It's a very question. And are we ready for such? My argument is that organizers of this summit must actually help us start thinking and be prepared for beneficiation. We must use the summit to craft solutions to our challenges, including extraction of these minerals from the rock, for which Mintech can be of assistance given the the existing capacity. Mintech is a state entity. It is doing research, minerals and mining, and it must be used optimally. For its part, South Africa is at an advanced stage of developing critical mineral strategy, which will help us to industrialize and support our just energy transition to a low-carbon future. We, however, submit to this summit that Africa needs to develop its own critical mineral strategy to ensure that it does not repeat mistakes of the past as it was done with the pit-to-port approach to mining traditional minerals. We must change that. We can't commit that as a continent. So it requires us to have a forum at continental level to discuss these strategies. We further submit that Africa must unite and collectively develop and uphold its industrialization strategy, rooted in the utilization of mineral resources endowment to transform African economies, eradicate poverty, and underpin Africa's sustainable growth and development. We hope and believe this platform will take us a step closer to the Continental Agreement and recommit to the African mining vision. African mining vision. We talk about it, we hardly refer to it when we talk of a transparent, equitable, and optimal exploitation of mineral resources to underpin broad-based sustainable growth of socio-economic development. In conclusion, I trust that we will effectively use this summit to foster a continental agreement on these minerals, encourage and deepen intra-African trade, position Africa as an investment destination and leading producer of critical minerals, and subsequently propel African economies towards inclusive and accelerated growth. It requires us to do more. We have 2 countries present here today out of 54. We have 3. It's ourselves and 2 others. 3 out of 54. It means the message must be spread to many other countries. Success in this regard will, however, be seen in what we do as a continent moving forward. Success is a function of choices we make. If we make wrong choices, success is going to evade us. If we make correct choices, success is going to be our friend. Thank you very much.